everything we know about the board game Pah Tum is wrong. Unless, of course, you knew it was wrong. Then I suppose you'd be right. Right? Well, this was an unusual experience. Somewhere along the lines in doing research, I came across a reference to this game called Pah Tum, and it appeared to be a historical game and well within my format here for the website, so I decided that I would just table that, made a quick note saying Pah Tum was a likely candidate for a video. And so here we are. I have my library of game books that I refer to when I'm doing research on a game for a video. I also, of course, have resources on the web that I go to that appear to be fairly reliable. But the first place I stop generally is Board Game Geek. I mean, they have thousands of records of games from around the world and throughout history. And because it's a wiki kind of a thing, there's a lot of the users that get in there and enhance those listings and such, add resources, add imagery. And so I went to Board Game Geek to look up the game Pah Tum and find out what they have to say about it. And so I found this description. The game of Pah Tum is played on a board of 7x7 squares. Like its distant relatives Renju, Pente, Gomoku, Noughts and Crosses, and Tic-Tac-Toe, players alternate in an attempt to form collections of markers which score points. Pah Tum game boards have been discovered in Mesopotamia and Assyria, and a board fashioned in ivory was discovered in the tomb of Reni-Seneb, 12th dynasty, and dated at roughly 1800 BC. Perfect, I said. Now, the only publisher listed there on the BGG site was a company called Kanare Abstract. And so I checked that out and got the contact information for Kanare Kato, who was listed as the artist and apparently the guy that put together this collection of games on the website. So I contacted him and said, where did you find the information for Pah Tum? Because Kanare Kato responded to me and said that he hadn't done a lot of extensive research, but that apparently the game had been mentioned in a book by Erwin Gloniger. And so I'd been wanting that Gloniger book for a long time. I said, well, here's a reason for me to go ahead and make the purchase. And so I got online and I clicked the button and I ordered the book. Meanwhile, I kept up my investigations a little further. I followed a trail of links that led me to the website of a Hungarian pop singer named Marosi Tamas. It turns out he's not only an award-winning entertainer and educator, but also a game designer. Well, back in 2012, this pop singer published a book called Agon, 24 Games of the World. It's a beautiful collection of photos of games with a summary of their rules and their history. And here's Pah Tum. This is a photo of the Pah Tum game board. Unfortunately, his book is way too expensive for my budget, and it's written in Hungarian, which doesn't do me much good anyhow. I also searched on Wikipedia. They said that there's no listing for the game Pah Tum. Well, that happens. Google keeps on bringing up this same quotation, the same paragraph over and over and over again. Obviously, everybody's sharing the same information with little or no embellishment. What do the professionals tell us? I searched through the indices of many books that I have on the shelf trying to find some reference to Pah Tum, and there's nothing. So I just put the investigation on the shelf for a while and didn't think about it much. Well then, a few weeks later, a package comes in the mail from Germany, and it's my Gloniger book, Das Spielbuch. It's a beautiful book, and it has a lot of references in there. Mr. Gloniger is a authority for sure. Designed a lot of the games that Ravensburger has published. It's all in German, which my German isn't all that great, but it didn't really matter a whole lot because there's not a mention in here anywhere about Pah Tum. Well, that well went dry, but I'd already opened the case back up again, so I figured, well, let's do a little bit more searching and see what Google brings up for me this time. So this time Google brought up a blog entry. The name of the blog was called Hidden History. And the headline was The Ancient Assyrian Game of Pah Tum. I said, aha, this may be the resource I've been looking for. It was written in 2023, so fairly fresh trail, and it repeated pretty much the same information I had already seen elsewhere. Didn't substantiate any of it, didn't give me any archaeological resources to look at. But I did notice that the name of the guy that wrote this article was Lenny Flank, and that name rang a bell. Lenny Flank sounded familiar. So I looked on my bookshelf, and sure enough, I had a book here by Lenny Flank. Classic board games from history. So I looked in the book. Nothing on Pah Tum. So another well went dry. Through the Google search, and it said that there was more at Wikipedia. Actually at the Turkish Wikipedia site. That link brought me to this. Articles for deletion. Log for September 2014. And about a third of the way down the page, Pah Tum. And the first line of that description, this article has been tagged as a hoax for some time. Yes, it was found to be fake. So, on the downside, this is not an ancient game. And in fact, it's apparently not even a vintage game. It's something that somebody made up a decade ago. And they created an elaborate backstory that sounded very authoritative. But the question remains in my mind, why would you do that? Why would you create such an elaborate background for a game that didn't exist? Is it just clickbait? It worked. I found it. But regardless of all that, it's not a bad game. And so I decided that I'd go ahead and share the rules with you. I mean, I put this much work into it already, right? So let's take a look at the rules on how to play Pah Tum, and then afterwards we'll kind of sum up this entire experience. The game is played on a board of 7 by 7 squares. There is a cache of light stones and dark stones, plus 5 black stones. The objective is to win, and that's all about the points you score at the end of the game. I'll get into that in a minute. The black stones are to be placed randomly in spaces on the board. Maybe use a pair of 7-sided dice to randomize this, or the dice app on your Smarty Pants phone. Well, after the black stones are in place randomly on the board, each player will in turn place stones of their own color on empty squares on the board. Eventually, the game board is full, and then the scoring begins. All the following configurations are scored orthogonally, not diagonally. 3 in a row is worth 3 points. 4 in a row is worth 10 points. 5 in a row is worth 25 points. 6 in a row is 56 points, and 7 in a row is 119 points. Now, according to the aforementioned Hidden History blog entry, there is some kind of math behind this scoring. I'm not a mathlete, so I've just got to take it on faith. Kanare Kato offers a couple of variants in his version of the game. One concerns the setup. The first player places all the black stones on the board, and the second player decides if they want to go first or not. It's sort of a pie rule opening. Another variation allows a stone to be removed when surrounded on 2 sides by placement. There's still no movement in the game, but placing a stone to create the traditional custodial capture removes the trapped stone. Well, it's a neat little game, but it still seems bizarre to me that somebody would go to all the effort to create this backstory. Of course, I've seen games before with invented histories. I mean, any game that has a fantasy theme or a fictional theme has some kind of a backstory, however sparse, and some of them are very elaborate, to the point where some games even include a book that tells the backstory so that you really can get into the setting and the challenges at hand within that setting. But this appeared to be an exercise in deliberate deception. I did get sucked in myself one time into a description of a game that sounded very legit at first. The description was something like, in the days of the royal courts of Europe and the borderlands around Der Zauberberg, there was a struggle for control. It got me going there for a bit, but then I remembered Der Zauberberg. I've heard that before. And I realized that that's the Magic Mountain, a mythical place. And so, thanks to Uncle Thumb, it came to me that this was a fabrication. But be that as it may, the saying goes caveat emptor, but I'd say caveat web surfer when you're doing research on these kinds of things. There are PahTum sets available online if you'd like to add the game to your collection. I found a few on Etsy. There are several make-your-own craft sites that you can visit as well. But Pah Tum is a playable game, so if you want to give it a shot, go right ahead. I do want to acknowledge the help I got from Japanese game designer Kanare Kato. You can check out his website. He's got a few really nice-looking little game sets there. Meanwhile, whether you play Pah Tum or some other invented ancient game, I would definitely encourage you, as usual, to be sure to play every day.